Welcome everyone to our next episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. And I see John's drinking his coffee already, and I don't have mine. I already drank mine, so bad on me for showing up without a coffee cup. But I'm super excited to be talking to John this morning because I think John Beachen's experience from both product management, services leadership, I think you've dabbled into sales. We've both been in the e-commerce industry, so we've got so much to talk about. But before that, let's hear from John directly. John, if you don't mind doing a quick introduction of who you are, where you are, and then we'll dive into it.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. My background, obviously, you can tell from my accent, I have a very southern accent, so far south that Australia was my country of birth. I've worked in Australia in the Asia Pacific region. I spent a brief stint in the UK and have spent almost half my life here in the United States. I see some of the geographic and cultural differences that impact our work. I started off as a network engineer. So I used to joke that people would ask me my address and I'd say it was 192.168.1.1.
Right.
But I liked the side of information technology that was customer facing. Things like ERP systems and mainframes, and they're very necessary systems in our world, but they didn't particularly excite me. E-commerce came to me about 15 years ago, and I latched onto it because it generated revenue for customers. It was the type of experience that the world was getting into back then. And you've just seen the growth of it exponentially year after year because it's such an easy way to transact, whether it be B2B, B2C. It reduces all that friction. So this is the field that I've worked in. I've been a seller. I've been a product manager, which is really interesting seeing the other side of it. I've worked as a project manager. I've worked as a consultant. And I also had a stint in managed services, which I joke that it's a job you can never win at because people expect these systems to work 100% of the time. But that was working Black Friday and high volume e-commerce operations. That's me.
Yeah. When was the first time, John, through all these experiences, even when you were product manager or managing services, when was the first time where you either ran into an individual that was in sales engineering role or kind of unofficially playing sales engineer? What was your first exposure to, oh, this is what sales engineering is?
Yeah, great question. I think I had quite a stint at IBM. IBM really took this role of sales engineering very seriously because it was the interface point between the technology they were building and businesses that needed to do something. They even had a career path specifically for technical sales engineers, to the point where you had this designation of distinguished engineer that sales engineers could go after. It was like a doctorate in sales engineering, if you like. And I remember encountering SEs, sales engineers, during the time. I was completely in awe of their ability to speak deeply about technology, but also generally about it and its application to business problems. It felt to me like there was some Jedi magic there that they could do that was very special. I was trying to work out what made these people tick, what made them really good at their job. And it was just that combination, very deep technical capabilities, the ability as a human being to speak about the application of it. I honestly think it's a role that doesn't get as much time in the limelight as it deserves. And it's a very necessary role for any technology business.
Yeah, amazing. That unique combination, right? There's many distinguished engineers out there, super smart in building solutions. And there's obviously many business focused people that can tell a really compelling story, but finding that balance of somebody who can tell the story while still have the depth of understanding, it's unique. And we'll delve into kind of how you learn about this profession. And I love that companies like IBM, Oracle, Salesforce, right? Big companies have found kind of their own mini universities and their own mini internal curriculum where they can take somebody right off of college and fine tune and mold that person into a professional sales engineer in their own way. They may call it solution consulting, technical sales, or pre-sales, whatever it may be. But within a couple of years, you can get to that point of an official certified sales engineer. Unfortunately, that all lives within those companies. If you're not part of those big corporations, it's really tough to get into this profession, right? How did your journey ended up leading a team of sales engineers?
Yeah, so I worked in sales for a while, and then I worked in product management, which was very eye-opening. Being the person who defines what the product should do by speaking to customers, getting feedback, prioritizing a roadmap. I found that really interesting leading into, and then I was offered the role of leading a team of global systems engineers for HCL's commerce product. It was very interesting coming from product management to sales engineering, because now I'm on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Now I'm the person asking product management for features that we need to sell the product. So it's good to sit in the shoes of the requester and the requestee, because the challenges each party has and how to negotiate and collaborate around that. I really like this role because I've learned through a couple of stints as a manager and through all the mistakes I've made. The mistakes I've made sometimes is prioritizing things other than the people.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking too much about the detail, trying to sequence all the things we need to do, and not paying enough attention to the human factors of how humans work, interact, what they like, what they dislike, what motivates them, this sorts of things. I think that's the critical thing that we all need as people. We need to feel like we've got a goal. We need to feel like our company cares about us. We need to feel like the work we're doing is meaningful. Everything levers from that. I like to tell members of my team, this sounds cliched, but they're my number one priority.
Yeah.
My number two priority is my clients. My number three priority is the company I work for.
Yeah.
Because you can't do three without two, and you can't do two without one.
Right.
This goes beyond sales engineering, but I think that's the key to managing a team of people who become your colleagues trying to achieve a goal.
I love that emphasis on people on human element. And you're spot on. This level of leadership applies in any function. But I think for sales engineers also, because there's lack of awareness and understanding, right, outside of the company, and even within the company, a lot of sales reps don't fully understand what motivates their sales. Even though they work with them all the time, they don't fully understand what motivates, what inspires their sales engineers. And some of them are surprised to know that, yes, we're part of the same team, but it's actually not the exact motivation that a sales rep may have, or the incentives that a sales rep may have. The same with sales engineers, right? There's an interesting dynamic that we can get into, but I want to tap into your product management experience, because I do believe the role of sales engineers, the influence of sales engineers goes beyond sales, right? Even though we sit in sales, that influence can be and should be heard and felt in product management, in customer services, in marketing. And I think product management is a really interesting one, and it's a common one that's not always leveraged, right, in its full capacity, right? Now, you mentioned as a product manager, when you moved into leading SEs, the requester and the requestee, most product managers I've talked to don't really engage with customers that much, which kind of boggles my mind. But I can understand that they're not in customer-facing role, right? The function doesn't really create an environment for them to be talking to customers all the time, right? But there is an overlap in the product. There's an overlap in the engineering mindset between a sales engineer and a product manager, that they speak the same language, right? When you were a product manager and product manager leader, what would have been ideal for your sales engineering team how could they have added value to you being even a better product manager?
I think as sales engineers, you are like a super customer, because any single customer of a software product only understands their needs. maybe a couple of other companies they worked for in the past. But as a sales engineer, you are exposed to a lot of different customers. So you begin to gain these macro trends, these repeating patterns that you see every time you enter a sales engagement of things that customers are looking for, things that don't exist in the market, things that people struggle with and want to be easier. I think it's really important for product managers to listen to sales engineers because you get this super knowledge of what the customer environment as a whole is looking for. And you don't get fixated on maybe one or two or three key big customers and bias your roadmap towards them. You need the roadmap for a product to be broad enough to serve your target market, your ideal customer profile. That's what we're all seeking as product managers. I think you almost need to over-index on what sales engineers are asking for. And for the other reason that they're your gateway to selling the product. And as a product manager, objective number one, yeah, you want to look after your customers, but you got to actually sell your product against the competition in the market. So what are those key things that make a difference? So as a product manager, I over-indexed what I was hearing from sales engineers in the field. And then if we both work US headquartered companies, you've got to consider the global scale of what's going on. There are requirements in Europe that differ from requirements in the US. There's considerations you need to have to be able to sell your product globally. And if you index too much on maybe some of your wealthiest US customers, then you're closing doors in other regions. But I think product managers really over-indexing on the feedback they're getting from sales engineers is very important.
If you haven't trademarked sales engineers are super customers, John, do it now. I love that. It explains exactly what you're trying to say in such a compelling way. That's common feedback I hear from product managers is that you can talk to one sales engineer and get an insight for that you would get from talking to 100 customers because sales engineers are talking to 100 customers day in, day out. And it's also current, right? They're talking to prospects that are evaluating your solution. They are talking to competitors at the same time. So you're getting up-to-date intel from talking to sales engineers. I love that. Commonly, it's noisiest sales reps or sales leaders that influence the product roadmap. What are your thoughts on, I totally agree with you that you should hyper-index on what SEs are saying, but it's usually the sales reps and the sales leaders and the biggest deals of the quarter that are influencing the direction. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a necessary evil in our industry, right? We're all competitive. We're all trying to win those deals. And sometimes to win them, we need to prioritize and give something that achieves that outcome. It's a balancing act. We don't live in a world of black and white. We live in a world of grays and in-betweens. That's really the human element, to take these different inputs and come up with the best solution that balances the needs of that sales imperative and making a product that is the best in market for your ideal customer profile. It's AI, the big buzzword in the industry, is really good, but can it balance those nuances? I don't think it can yet, and that's where our role comes in and is very important.
Let's go into that segue. I love that you're bringing up AI. We haven't really talked on many of our podcasts about the role of AI. For many sales engineers, and we're not worried about AI taking over. I think what we are cautioned about is what aspect of sales engineering can be optimized, quote unquote, outsourced to AI, right? I think about RFP process. I think about knowledge management, tracking, and prep. When I prep for a demo, there's a whole lot of language processing that I'm doing. I'm looking at the prospect side. I'm trying to gain some insights into what are they selling? What's their business model? What kind of promotions they have on their site? Who am I meeting with? What school did they go to? There's all these things that AI can do it for me. And like a secretary, it's like, hey, Sachin, here's your one pager. what took you half an hour now takes you 3 minutes to skim through. You're ready, right? I want to hear from you. What's your point of view on how good or bad AI is going to be for sales engineering in the future?
It's a fascinating topic, right? I'm scouring the news daily for what's happening in the AI field. Things that aren't AI have been badged AI. True AI discoveries scare people. It's really churning up a bunch of emotion about what's happening with technology. I think personally, AI is really there to assist human beings at being better at what they do. I don't believe its role is going to necessarily replace human beings. If it does, we've got bigger societal problems to solve, right? Let's make the assumption that where it's best suited is making humans better, making humans more productive. At the end of the day, in our role, sales is people buying software or services from other people. I don't think you can replace that human element with AI, at least in this point of time, but you can augment that people selling software to people with some of the things you were talking about, the ability to do a research report on a customer, the ability to virtualize what we do a little bit. For instance, I think the ability to demo virtually and via video is very important now. Building a library of all of the things that you would typically demo to be able to deliver that to somebody halfway across the globe, or somebody that wants to consume it at 6 a.m. over a cup of coffee as opposed to 11 a.m. in a conference room. I think those types of skills are useful. It is going to impact us a little bit in terms of the ease of showing our products without that live human intervention. One of the things that I look for in sales engineers is that they're being their authentic self as they demo. Because customers are buying from people, you can't be a speaking robot voice. You need to be yourself, an individual expressing your own humanity as you go through that technology demo cycle.
Right.
That's the balancing act we're going to try to do. We've got a lot of AI capabilities, but we need to inject that humanity into it. People are still jumping on planes to go sell stuff. There's a reason for that. It's because people want to buy from people.
Yeah. And I think the credibility cannot be built by being robotic, right? It's that human element that helps people connect with you. Sometimes that human element is you being shy or not being as polished or not knowing the product. If you don't have the answer, it makes you more human to acknowledge and accept that, ensure that you give the confidence to the prospect that I don't know the answer, but I will definitely figure it out for you, and then follow through on that promise. The AI element is interesting because, like you were saying, how can AI be leveraged to improve the way we sales engineer? I also encourage SEs, both at our company and in my network, is it's also the latest technology. We're technologists, right? In a sales cycle, our reps, our prospects, everybody kind of expects us to know what's going on in the industry, what's the latest trend. I think that's what I love about this job. It's not just my intellectual curiosity, it's part of my resume that I gotta read and always be learning. And so I encourage everyone to not be afraid of AI, right? Not be ashamed of AI, right? Be in the core of it and help actually lead how AI eventually gets used, both by us and for us. So we'll know in 5 years, John, what ends up happening.
If you think about what AI is really good at, it's perfecting a process. What is it not so good at? Creativity. The currency of our era as human beings and as sales engineers is to maintain our creativity. If we can do that, there's no AI that I know of that can make a great cup of coffee or a cocktail or write a book or paint something. There's been attempts at that, but they've all failed miserably because people want things from people. So I think maintain that creativity and authenticity in what you do technically, you'll be okay.
Amazing stories. John, you and I probably have at least 5 or 6 more topics that we can dive into. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your guidance on both AI and product management. I think that SE and product management experience and collaboration is really important. There's a huge opportunity at most companies to revisit and figure out how are we leveraging our SEs. I would love to have you back because I have so many more questions for you.
I'd love to do it again, and I welcome anyone viewing this to reach out to me on LinkedIn and have a conversation. Just talking through these topics is useful for everyone. I appreciate what you're doing with the podcast and happy to come back again.
Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the afternoon.